Welcome to Control Alt DAO, a podcast where we explore the convergence of leadership, martial arts, mindfulness, and talk about ways to navigate gracefully in this time of uncertainty and rapid change for our planet. I'm your host, John Laux. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Control Alt DAO podcast. I'm your host, John Laux. Excited to be here. We're starting something new in this episode. This is something that I have been thinking about doing for some time, a couple of years, and now felt like the moment to begin to express and explore in this way and talk about themes and share and put stuff out there. And that's what I wanted to cover. What felt appropriate in this first episode was to talk about exactly that. Why now felt like the right time to start a podcast, and more so what I'm hoping to express what the flavor is going to be as I get into this. And so there are three broad themes that came to mind that I'll share with you in that respect. And the first is fairly macro. Just life has been pretty dang intense for the last 5 years or so. Going back to COVID and everything that followed after that. I think it's been intense for everybody. I don't know anyone who, had an easy time since 2020. But just to give a sense for our particular family flavor of it, all going through all that same stuff. We were still living in Chicago, or the Chicago suburbs at that point in time. In 2021, we decided to move to Asheville, North Carolina. There was a lot of intensity around that, getting our house ready to sell, selling it, moving, finding a place in a very competitive real estate market, all those things. And we were looking forward to settling down here in Asheville. And then in 2022, May 27th is when my wife got her cancer diagnosis. I'll share probably more some of the particulars of that in a future episode. But, suffice to say, the last 3 years have been, a chapter of life that we didn't expect, but that was very much, thrust upon us, and invited a lot of reflection and response and careful consideration of everything that went into that. And that's ebbed and flowed. She's doing well at the moment still, and we hope for a good long time going forward. But that also paralleled a period where I had taken on a new job and was going through quite a bit of organizational change and upheaval and just challenge in a lot of different ways too. And so, life got intense in 2020 and it just never really slowed down. Exactly. And we've navigated through a lot through that period. And I think have done it with, a fairly high level of grace and fluidity, keeping our family intact, making sure that our daughter's needs have also been, tended to, as well as our own. And just trying to be as real as humans as we can through that period. But it's been challenging. It's been challenging regardless. And, while this has been our particular flavor of the challenge of the last 5 years in this moment we're in, I don't think anybody's had a light time of these last 5 years, as I've said. The practices that have helped me through that period have been, really meditation and martial arts, meditation pretty much daily, martial arts multiple times a week. Very grateful. I got introduced to the Gene Keys teachings in 2021, which have really just provided an enormous amount of clear and deeply perceptive insights that I've been able to take into my life. I'll probably be talking about the Gene Keys a fair bit through these episodes. Human design also a little less so, though, on the whole. And I started working with, I met Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan, I think also in 2020, and someone that I've worked with both in terms of vitality, well-being, as well as in more of a coaching capacity over the last couple of years. And that's been a beautiful support through all the things. So I mention all that because those have been things that have been helpful to me in terms of how I've been navigating through this period. And I hope that as I get into the details in different episodes, that some of that exploration is going to be helpful to other people as well in terms of navigating through this period that we're in with a level of grace and adaptiveness to changing circumstances in life. So related to that, the second broad reason I thought a podcast would be interesting is just to think out loud and get expressed. I'm an introvert, and so the ways that I express are often kind of situation dependent. It's not necessarily at a big party, but there's a lot going on inside always, and so finding the forums where it feels good to get some of that out. Much of my communication during the week is very purposeful, focused, outcome-oriented. Professionally, I'm an executive working at the intersection of technology and risk management. So work is one of the big areas I put a lot of my time and attention. It's an area where I really yearn to be of service and hope that I am being so and looking for ways to continue to do that even more. But, let's be honest, for most of us, work demands a lot of output, right? And it was something that was helpful to me to discern last year that there are things that I do in life because I want to be of service. The work I do, family, I would put in that category as well. Not only for that reason, but I certainly feel like it's one of the contributions I'm making in life. I've been on boards and I've chaired boards in the past, and those have felt really good, but it's a lot of it's from that gratification of making an impact. But there's other things that I do just because they are inherently fulfilling and just deeply help recharge the battery. I put meditation and martial arts in that camp. I'm not trying to be a meditation teacher someday. I'm not trying to be a sifu or a sensei, but they just feel good to do on their own merits, and they help rejuvenate. And it's been helpful for me to keep clear on when I'm contemplating an activity, which lane am I in between those two lanes? Am I doing this because I want to make an impact, or I yearn to be of service and contribute, or am I doing this just because it feels good and helps recharge the battery? I mention it because I have a tendency, I think many of us who are high achiever, high performer individuals in life probably tend to do this, where we take something fun and then we think we need to make something of it, make it into a side hustle or get some recognition or rewards out of it or something. And it's helped me to be clear right up front. I want this podcast just to be fun. I am not trying to make this into something. I just want this to feel like a forum to express and explore and play. And, we'll touch on some things that have been meaningful to me and I think to others. Looking forward to having some guests on to explore some of these things in future episodes as well. But I really want the spirit of this just to be exploratory, novel, fun, not to feel like work in the frowny face sense of that word. My interests tend to be deep rather than broad. And so finding the right forums to go in and explore with similar people, whether it's leadership, aspects of meditation, different martial arts, how the martial arts show up in life, from the day job to some degree, technology, risk management, understanding change and doing what we can to anticipate change, the known unknowns, the unknown unknowns. And just navigating uncertainty in general, which feels like it's so much of life right now with the pace that things are changing. So this feels like a forum where we can get into all of that in different ways that feel interesting and fun. And finally, the third broad reason, just building on that I wanted to explore through this podcast, is it feels like there's a common thread to explore in all of this. And not so much in the individual themes, whether it's martial arts, leadership, change, but in how these things come together in day-to-day life, in relationships, in the meetings that we find ourselves in being parents. And so there's this notion that I've been exploring and trying to put a word on or a phrase on for a couple of years now. And the thing that I think has best characterized it for me would be organizational kung fu, or what I might call the organizational martial arts, or relational martial arts, relational kung fu. what I'm wanting to get at that has just felt not part of a lot of the conversation about work, about life, about jobs, about how we operate in the world is this bringing a particular lens, a particular intention and discipline to how we go through life and play and explore in the live theater of exploration in each moment that we find ourselves in. I'm pretty practical. I've got a lot of fifth lines in my Gene Keys profile for those that know what that means. I love meditation. As I mentioned, it's one of the things that I keep coming back to find calm within the chaos and center myself daily. But it's also very clear to me that I am not a monk. I am a householder. I'm a practitioner. And, these practices that I explore need to work for me in the context of the challenges and just the circumstances that I am navigating through in life, which means a job, and a job with a fair bit of responsibility. It means parenting. It means just navigating life in the 2020s, which is a time that's extremely demanding for all of us, from what I can see. So all the arenas I'm in, and that's where I want to be met, and that's where I want the practices that are fulfilling me to help me serve. And martial arts for me, more so than meditation on its own, are really what help bring that together, because there's a mindfulness lens to it, certainly, but there's also a very clear application, right? Like we train for the situations where we're under threat, or where we could be under threat. Better, to do what we can to avoid the threat in the first place, but to be aware of it and to navigate those possibilities. That feels a lot like life to me in a broader way. And I particularly like the notion of organizational Kung Fu, not only because I'm practicing Wing Chun as my main discipline right now, but Kung Fu itself is actually, to me, a very broadly applicable term. Kung Fu simply means the skill that is developed through hard work. There's nothing explicitly about martial arts in that, right? That can show up in a lot of different forums. And so one of the questions that I have explored with members of my teams at work is, what Kung Fu have you been building recently? We oftentimes do the work, but we don't necessarily distill the lessons, distill the essence out, the muscle that we've been forging in the process. And I think that's an interesting and important aspect to bring to not only a work situation, but life at a broader level. We don't train in a martial art to be able to go beat up a child or to beat up somebody smaller than us. And that's kind of an absurd notion, really, especially when put that way. We train in a serious martial art for when the odds are stacked against us, when somebody larger than us is being aggressive, or more than one person is acting as an aggressor toward us. We train for the challenging situations. There's a lot of character that's formed in that. There's a lot of gratification that comes from taking that challenge on and seeing the progress. I know that's something that I feel in my martial arts training. And I emphasize it because that's not usually how we talk about work, right? Work is, from a certain vantage point, I think for many people, a struggle. It's a necessary evil to make ends meet. And work is also often, for those of us who, fortunately are, maybe thriving, not just surviving, in that sense, work becomes to a certain degree about measures of worldly success. It becomes about outcomes. My LinkedIn feed is largely populated by people posting, "I'm excited I got this new opportunity. Look at me. I have more responsibility now." And everyone applauds and we do our thing. But that is, there's a place for that, right? There's people that I like cheering on and seeing them thrive and take on new responsibilities. But that is just so not the timbre of real life, especially when we are grappling with the real things. If we're taking on real challenges and we're training for that situation where the chips are stacked against us, life's not going to always feel successful and simple that way. It's something I've had to learn myself as someone who spent a lot of my early career advancing through a professional exam certification process, which, in many respects felt challenging and difficult, but it was a very closed container. Like I knew how to do how to prep for the tests. I did the work. I worked my butt off. I did those things. But the satisfaction I feel from having, gotten that professional certification is really small compared with the satisfaction I feel from the level of honesty and partnership that I have with my wife, for example, or the level of risk taking and grit that my professional work in more recent years have demanded of me. And those have put me in situations where, the outcome's not assured necessarily. As I'm recording this, I'm coming to the end of the completion of about a year and a half's worth of work on our flagship software product. And, in recent conversations I've had, we have put everything we've had into this thing, and I still don't know if it's going to be seen as a success in the eyes of the market or not. I certainly hope so. We've done our research. We believe it ought to be, but it's not up to us. It's up to our customers and how we help them see it, but ultimately how they absorb it for themselves. And from that vantage point, like any creative act, we just have to offer it up and, let the world receive it as it is. And at some level, as an executive in this organization, it matters greatly to me. I hope that this comes across as a success. I hope people love it. And, there's always going to be issues that people find, but I hope it is very well received. But there's also, from the vantage point of this conversation, it almost doesn't matter. And I say that because whether it is seen as a success or a failure, I know internally that my team has worked ridiculously hard on this process, and I have left everything on the field in terms of getting through this, through a whole lot of challenge, upset, things that did not go according to plan, people I thought were available who ended up not being available, all the things. I'll probably get into that more in a future episode as well. But again, from that place of a martial arts mentality, what is being forged as we go about our lives is often very, very different from how life looks on the surface. And it's that deeper essence of, what do we call it? Character cultivation, just taking on the challenge, that is what I look to explore through the conversations in this podcast. And again, I like the martial arts, particularly the Taoist ones, because it's not just about working hard. It's about finding the relaxation in it, looking for the flow in it, not just knuckling through or gritting it out. To that end, I think what's interesting about the martial arts is they've gone through their own evolution, right? They all emerged from somewhere, from the original, killing arts, fighting arts, arts of war. So jujitsu became judo, aikijutsu became aikido. These arts went from being largely about techniques, ways of killing people or ways of subduing an opponent. Those techniques are still there, but in the renaming from, say, aikijutsu to aikido, the Tao element of it, the way, the ethic, the code, the discipline, those things rose more to prominence. And, in doing so, it puts the emphasis on something else. It's not just about the techniques. There's a deeper inner essence that is being pointed at through that renaming. And sometimes for individuals, it goes a little even further than that. So, Bruce Lee, to take an example, Bruce Lee started out as a Wing Chun practitioner. He eventually synthesized that into his personal expression of martial arts, which was Jeet Kune Do. So there's a personalization, there's a finding oneself and expressing oneself through the art. That's possible just even beyond the martial art itself. And again, there's a similar kind of a flavor that I've been, I guess, feeling and exploring and pointing around for some time. My coach has been talking about the Tao of John. What is this thing that John does in a meeting or in situations that allows things to flow and happen and unfold naturally and resolve in beautiful ways, and to see ways to resolve seeming conflict without a whole lot of conflict, and find kind of a beautiful inner essence that wasn't evident from the outside. This seems to keep happening as I navigate through situations in life. So this notion of organizational kung fu is, for me, like trying to put a name on the Tao of John. This, it's my inquiry and my ongoing attempt to express this essence of what it is that I do, the things that I see and that I hold for the groups that I'm in. And again, it's not really about the content or the subject matter. It feels like a way. It is something happening in the here and now. And so when I name this podcast Control Alt Tao, that is what I'm seeking to point at and to explore through this. On a Windows keyboard, this is going to be obsolete someday, but many of us of a certain age remember, you hit Control Alt Delete to reset your computer, essentially, to if a program's hanging or things are running slowly, you hit that keystroke and you bring up the thing and essentially kind of hit the reset button, like take a step back, look at what's operating or how things are operating from a broader perspective. That's often the kind of role that I find myself playing in groups, to take a step back, to reconsider, to look at the first principles that are in play and ask some questions and reevaluate, like, what is it that we're trying to do here? And with that broadened context, how can we navigate to be of the greatest service toward achieving those objectives? It's a lot like meditation, actually, at least the way that I've been trained. Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche of the Tergar school will say, short times, many times, returning back to presence again and again. The monkey mind will take us, whatever direction, come back, just come back. And, so in this context, coming back to that larger perspective, coming back to what's possible, not getting lost in the weeds. And so to that end, inquiry is very much the spirit of what I'm hoping to achieve or to create through these conversations. There'll be a certain amount of insights I've, developed over the years, ideas that have occurred to me, but I don't want this to be an exposition of here's stuff that I've learned. This still feels very live to me. Because again, every day there's a new challenge, there's a new meeting, there's a new family dynamic that we find ourselves in. And so, whatever has gotten us to this point has just gotten to this point. And now it's not about the performance of the past. It's, again, the practice of what's here and now. My style of leadership is very much to lead from the front, not from the back or the rear, not from above. It's really kind of being in the essence of things. There's a way I really don't understand the work that I do very much. And I mean that from the subjective point of view. In Gene Keys, my life's work sphere is a second line, which is the sphere of the dancer, the sphere of flow. It's a very playful and unself-conscious sphere. I have great awareness around the situations I'm in, the dynamics that I am attuned to, and the way that I'm seeking to navigate them. But I often don't understand myself particularly well in some of these situations. So this is all still very much, an unfolding discovery for me as I go through life and the situations that are coming to mind to explore. But I will say, for me, that this feels like a place that's close to truth, that the truth sneaks up on us. The truth is present but hidden. If we, a lot of the meditation arts are to kind of sneak up on it and maybe come to recognize what's so close that we're maybe not even necessarily able to recognize or see it without a little bit of training and a lot of practice. And I would also underscore, for me, the truth very much includes play. I can be a fairly serious person. One of the things that I think life has presented to me repeatedly is the opportunity to fall down, the opportunity to get back up again, but to laugh and to have humor. There's that line in the Tao Te Ching that the fool hears the Tao and laughs, and it wouldn't be the Tao if it were otherwise. And that also feels very much true to me. So, we won't take ourselves too seriously in this. I think life is, again and again, the opportunity to play while we are along for the journey. So in terms of the format for this, many of these episodes will be me just exploring. As I mentioned, I hope to have some guests along the way to explore different aspects of this topic. And we'll see how it goes. Some of them might just be short little vignettes of me rapping or playing handpan or doing things that I enjoy and expressing another aspect of life, bringing more of myself into presence and into being known by the wider world. So that's what I've got, and that's what I'm looking forward to exploring through these conversations. So thank you very much for listening, and looking forward to getting started. Let's do it.